This lecture is going to look at the internet and social media and its connections to public relations. We're going to look at the internet in general, leveraging the power of the internet, the tools that are associated with it like webcasts, podcasts, wikis, and social media, and then also look specifically at the rising tide of mobile-enabled content. The internet is the first medium that allows almost anyone, and literally almost anyone, to send messages to a mass audience without the message being filtered by an editor or journalist of some sort. So for the first time, beginning in the 90s, people were able to present ideas and opinions about products, services, companies, ideals, governments, without a filtration system, which was typically the mass media or some other form of editing. Now, the embracing of the internet has taken much less time than the growth of any other mass medium in history, and I'm sure you can imagine why. It is quite appealing to embrace something that allows you to be free to express your opinions. Now, culturally speaking, it is not necessarily as open in every area as it is in the United States, but it is still a tool that is used much more frequently and at a much faster pace than any other mass medium tool in history. And even those cultures in which the internet is a little bit more restricted, the tools that are available have led to some drastic presentations and opinions and ideals being pushed through the use of the internet and other forms of tools that are available on the internet. And if you read through your book, you can see some of those examples, which are very interesting to see how the internet played a role. Now, the idea of the power of internet is very attractive to public relations professionals. Prior to the use of the internet, there were very standard guidelines, very typical procedures that had to be done in order to present information. Now, not so much. There's actually a great increase in opportunity and a large decrease in cost for public relations professionals. If you look at this list here, there are a lot of reasons why the internet is powerful to PR practitioners. It's easy to update material. No longer do you have to reprint items. You just update them on the website. In the past, you would have to reprint things when they changed. You would have to redo something and then print it out, which cost a significant amount of money, where now you can just change it on the website and it's very easy to do. There's also a level of interactivity that didn't exist prior to this. And there's a variety of other things that come with the use of the internet. The fact that there's plenty of space to present information, whereas on other forms of mass media, be it, say, a newspaper or a television show, there's a limited amount of space, be it time or a physical space on a newspaper, that you could only present certain kinds of information. Now, with the internet, you can present whatever information you want, and you can even do it in layers. Each click leads you to more and more information. Now, in terms of interactivity, because this is something very unique to the internet, where in the past with mass media it was, I'm going to present filtered information from the top down. So I've created this information, I've filtered it and edited it, now I'm presenting it to you. Remember agenda setting theory. The media doesn't tell you what to think, but they do tell you what to think about. So they are pushing information out to you, whereas the internet allows the person to pull information to themselves. So it is more interactive. You can take the precedence here. You can decide what you are going to pull from the internet, as opposed to only receiving pushed out information. So that interactivity leads to a different perception of how information is revealed and communicated to your audience, because they can pull it, they can read what they want. Remember, we've got a pretty passive audience for most things, so the desire to get information across is going to require you to think outside the box when it comes to internet public relations, as opposed to the traditional mass media. And when they calculate out, when anybody would calculate out the ROIs, the return on investment for a website, you can see very easily that a website is well worth the investment, and it definitely contributes to the bottom line because, again, it's cost effective. Changes don't require a whole lot of financial additions, and it is something that can be done fairly quickly, so there's a pretty strong return on investment. And there are a lot of different tools that can be made use of now. I'm sure many of you have seen webcasts or podcasts, or maybe have been active in a wiki before, or used a wiki. I mean, I'm sure you've used Wikipedia, so that would be considered one of those wikis. But let's look at these real quickly. Webcasting is something that relays, and oftentimes you'll see this on YouTube or other areas, something that relays visual and auditory messages. And more than 90% of the public companies use webcasts for everything from news conferences to employee training. They can be live, they can be pre-recorded. It kind of varies depending upon the purpose, but webcasting is used quite a bit in order to present information. Now, there are other tools that are used, and maybe some of you listen to podcasts and participate in these, but podcasts are really fantastic. They're so mobile, they're portable, you can get access to the information at any time, and it's cheap. So what is a podcast? A podcast is basically the audio that you get from me each week. When I send you out audio information, that is what you are getting with a podcast, although it's housed differently and such. But if you have a phone with a podcasting app, you know sort of how it works. Basically, it's a series of stored audio files that are produced by a person or a group of people or company on various topics or specific to one niche. And so this is something that can be accessed anywhere and can be very individualized. And again, it's cost effective. All you need is, honestly, I record those audio announcements on my phone. So all you need is the ability to record something auditorily. You don't even need images. And then finally we have wikis, which can be used in PR campaigns and employee relations. Basically, a wiki is similar to a Google Doc. It's editable by a variety of people. So if you are, say, trying to present information about what's going on in your company, you might have a wiki up so that your employees can add information and delete as needed to keep it up to date, as opposed to creating a print copy that is bound and costs a lot and people will look at once and is going to be out of date in a year. Now, in addition to the traditional use of internet, and I can't believe now we're saying traditional when it's still very young, we have social media, which is a different way of using the internet. And I know you all know about social media, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what these things are, since you know what blogs and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are, just how they impact or are participated in terms of public relations. Now, blogs are typically used by companies, and they are often split into multiple avenues. Sometimes you have a CEO or some form of leader or management that will have their own blog, or you will have employees that each have their own blog. If you've ever listened to a news station or something along those lines, oftentimes the talking heads, the major players, the voices that you hear, the announcers that you hear, they have their own blogs. And so they keep kind of a running commentary about life at their company, as well as just current events and such. They've really become mainstream sites in terms of both the numbers and their influence. And when you have these things like corporate or executive blogs and the employee blogs, you can see different impacts. Now, an executive blog is usually the official voice of the organization, so it has to be carefully done, and oftentimes it's outsourced to the PR group. So it's something to keep in mind. You have to be sort of careful with that, because when it becomes a PR responsibility, it can start to sound a little less informal and has kind of a rote feel to it. So it's not always the best idea to write the blogs as the PR professional in the name of the executive, but sometimes you don't have a choice. Employee blogs are often done quite a bit, but they do present their own form of liability and potential for proprietary information to be released when it's not meant to be. So you might want to consider creating guidelines for employees who create blogs. You don't want to restrict every word they say because that becomes its own problem. But there are some guidelines that can be put into practice, such as you must identify that you work for this company and that your opinions are your own and not that of the company that you work for. Or you could just provide a list of all these requirements that keep it so that opinions and ideas are representative of the person as opposed to representative of the company, and then allow editing features if proprietary information is released. That way it can be deleted. That can get a little dicey though, so it's something to consider but maybe not take action on immediately. Now, third-party blogs, however, are very interesting because these are blogs or groups that speak about your company or your product or your celebrity on a regular basis as opposed to coming straight from the company itself. And that's something that should be monitored all the time. And then when applicable, make a connection to the person that is presenting the information, to the blogger, and see if you can't formulate a relationship. I'm sure many of you have seen on some blogs where they have the person that is presenting the information will say, I received this product in order to give my honest review of it and such. That would be the company formulating a connection with a third-party blog. So they have their uses, again, virtually free, but they do run risks. And here's a question to consider. What are the potential upsides and downsides for organizations and individuals that blog? What are the benefits, public relations wise, to having a blog, and what are the potential downsides? If you're thinking about your client, consider that. Are there benefits for your specific client to have a personal blog or a company-based blog? And if they do, what are the potential downsides to that? Now, social media isn't just obviously blogs, it's also social media sites like Facebook and Twitter. And Facebook is by far the most popular social networking site. Many organizations have a presence on these sites and they use it for that interactivity. So they can present information that is easily accessible, that is more relaxed, a little less formal, and allows for their audience to be involved or engaged in the process. And most commonly, the information is very conversational, and it needs to be creative and low key, and often incorporate images and things like that in order to grab your audience. Because again, Facebook is huge. I mean, look at these numbers. And this is just from 2011. So right now, I'm sure it's twice as much possibly. But it's something to think about. If there's that many people using Facebook, or that have tools on Facebook, have their own websites and such, or have their own Facebook pages and such, you have to make sure that you can grab your audience because there's a lot to choose from. Now, Twitter is probably the second most popular social media networking site, and it is, as you know, used to distribute quick, late-breaking information. A lot of PR practitioners use it to submit quick responses to ideas, to questions, to do quick product releases. You only have 140 characters, so you have to make it simple and straightforward, but it's really great for marketing and promotional purposes. It allows you to get information out there very easily and in a very short, brief manner. Now, YouTube is also a really excellent tool that has gained in intensity over the last couple of years. It is the premier social networking site for videos. And today's organizations are involved in posting all types of video clips. Not just your standard, here's a little blurb about our company, but also things that are very creative, interesting, maybe even humorous, that connect to your product or your company. So there'll be music videos or product demonstrations or contests that are done through YouTube as opposed to your traditional lecture-based YouTube video or lecture-based video in general. So YouTube is becoming very, very commonly used in public relations. And again, it's simple and it's very low cost. Now, the last thing that we want to talk about here is the rising tide of mobile-enabled content. Right now, mobile-enabled content has almost exceeded desk-based computers and laptops. So the ability to use tablets and phones to access information is more widespread and more intense than any other tool. As a matter of fact, what's strange is it's projected that 7.4 billion mobile devices will be in use in the future, but there's projection of only 7.2 billion people to be in the future for the next few years. So I find that kind of strange that there'll be more mobile devices than there will be people in the world. So think about that when you're thinking about the rising tide, the intense avenues that are available based on the use of mobile-enabled content. Texting is still the #1 way people, especially younger folks, communicate with each other in a quick basis, which is probably one of the reasons why Twitter is so popular, because it's very similar in its feel to texting. And apps are everywhere. There are thousands and thousands of apps created every single week, almost in the millions. Not every week in the millions, but offered on iTunes or what have you, or the Apple Store or what have you. There's all kinds of apps available on pretty much everything. The only other thing that journalists and PR practitioners use regularly and are sort of getting away from more now are QR codes. And I know some of you have used these before and some have not. It's basically, if you don't already know what it is, it's basically that little, looks like a barcode that you scan and it'll take you to information or to a website of some sort. It's really nice to use, especially in places where the amount of space you have to present information is very tight. However, I wouldn't say that it is the most popular thing. It's really great if you're trying to just get people to go to your website and you can set them up, say, as a flyer or a brochure or something like that. That way it does its job, but it hasn't been as useful as some people have hoped it would be. Apps, yes. Texting, yes. Social media, yes. QR codes, sort of. So that's a little bit about our information. Hopefully you have a general overview of how social media and the internet is playing a role in public relations and will allow you to answer some of your questions for this week. Please let me know if I can help in any way and have a great week.